myself and Jordan Cronin at the Newcastle United training ground. It's been a while, Jordan, since you and me occupied this barn, if you like.
Yeah, holidays. I think I've done 2 by myself. Sick of that now. But before that, you were here by yourself.
Live stream, didn't I? And then I met you for a game of football later in the day. So, we're back. We're back to normal, just as the season's drawing to a close. Anyway, so yeah. Press conference for Eddie Howe today ahead of the trip to Crystal Palace on Wednesday evening. I'd say plenty to talk about. We'll start where we always do. Injuries, where Eddie Howe confirmed a few stories that have been doing the rounds, as well as provided a big update on Callum Wilson as well.
Yeah, Callum Wilson, so it sounds like he's going to be back involved tomorrow, trained well this week, built up a lot of confidence in the sort of upper body, says he's fine physically in terms of being able to run. Obviously his injury was a pectoral muscle injury, so he's been able to maintain his fitness and anticipates that he'll come back hitting the ground running. So yeah, big boost to have him back. It might give them a chance to start actually bringing Isak off in games, or indeed play the both together. Obviously a lot of injuries at the moment, so an attacking option there is certainly welcome. But apart from Wilson, it sounds like that the squad will probably remain the same from Spurs. Didn't sound like anyone's due back soon. He's asked about Trippier, Pope, Almiron, Joe Linton, said that the hopes to have them back before the end of the season, but hasn't gave a definite date. So
he actually hit back at reports that they were back in training. I don't know where those reports came from.
It wasn't us.
No,
it wasn't us.
No. Miguel Almiron's back on the grass, but not back in actual training. And then Nick Pope, the same. He's working individually, isn't he? So yeah. Hopeful we'll see those players before the end of the season. There's then the knock-on impact of the Euro 2024 squad in terms of Kieran Trippier and Nick Pope. Kieran Trippier, if fit, is probably a shoo-in for that squad. Nick Pope is probably one of those on the cusp where if he's fit and if he's playing games, he probably gets in, but he hasn't played since December, so early December at that. So yeah, that's a question mark over him. And yeah, Callum Wilson, a massive boost. What I will say is, hopefully Newcastle can avoid this curse where ever Callum Wilson's fit, Alexander Isak gets injured, and whenever Isak's fit, Callum Wilson gets injured. So yeah, hopefully that gets avoided, and Newcastle, as they did the back end of last season, can have that Alexander Isak, Callum Wilson complementing each other and really fit and firing the final 6 games of the season, because Alexander Isak's form recently since returning to full fitness has been incredible, and Callum Wilson, he's had his injury issues this season, but his goal to game or goal to minute ratio has been very impressive, particularly in the Premier League. So yeah, big boost for Newcastle United. And yeah, I guess we'll touch on the season ending injury blows, which we knew. It had been reported by our colleague Craig Hope earlier in the month that Lewis Miley and Joe Willock, their seasons had been declared over. Not necessarily any injury setback or anything like that. It was more a decision to protect both players, to get them back up to speed and really fit and firing for the start of pre-season. Really, after an Achilles injury for Joe Willock, recurring issue, and then Lewis Miley, it's been a back injury on England under-21s, under-20s duty, I should say, last month, which again he's played 20 odd games this season, approaching 30 games for a 17-year-old lad, turns 18 early next month. It's a lot of football, so I think that's probably why the decision was made to protect him and to get him ready for the new season, where I'm sure you'll have a role to play once again. So yeah, feels like a massive blow, but in reality you understand why the club have made those decisions, because Eddie Howe did suggest that if really necessary, those players could have potentially played on.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to one of your questions, and you asked about Elliot Anderson, and has Elliot Anderson's emergence almost, allowed them to take that decision with the 2 players? Eddie Howe said no, but I think in reality, you just thought he's talking them off.
Makes it easier, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Elliot Anderson, it's a big 6 games for him, because I think, as we spoke about previously on here, there's been sort of moments where it feels like the door's open for him and he hasn't been there. He's either been injured or he hasn't been able to get in the team, whereas the door's open for him firmly this time, and he grasped the opportunity with both hands against Spurs. So if he can maintain that between now and the end of the season, even looking at the summer, where you're thinking Tonali's going to come back, do you need to go and sign a centre midfielder in the summer? So it's almost a window now for Elliot Anderson to really showcase his ability that we all know he's gotten, the high ability that Eddie Howe spoke about. I think the way he's played. Yeah, exactly. That's a big thing as well, because I think Elliot Anderson has been prone to picking up injuries even last season. I don't think it was obviously a long-term injury last season, but there was points where he was missing because of little knocks. I think he's probably had a back injury for a while, hasn't he? Thinking back to last season, I'm sure he had a back injury then as well. So obviously he's had that lengthy period out. It seems like he's fully fit now, and as I say, it's a big opportunity for him to really show what he's about, because I think what I've seen of him in the Tottenham Hotspur game, that like tenacious, the high press, just everything about him, the aggression in that midfield. He's the closest thing Newcastle have got to Joe Linton. Eddie Howe doesn't necessarily agree. He spoke about Anderson being that player that can provide goals and assists, and look, if Elliot Anderson can start providing goals and assists as well as have that aggression and that tenacity in midfield, Newcastle have actually got some play on their hands.
Yeah, it seems bizarre, because Elliot Anderson, you do think of him as a player who can do that, yet he actually hasn't really in competitive games for Newcastle. I think he got an assist the back end of last season. He might have got maybe 1 or 2 this season, but not enough. Yet in pre-season, he's like goals galore, assists galore, gets really involved. He shows he can do it against Premier League opposition, or decent level opposition at least. So just transferring that into a Premier League game or competitive games is the next step for Elliot Anderson. You imagined he would have done it this season, given the pre-season he had, and given he came into the side and looked quite good. Even I think he played maybe ahead of Sandro Tonali at one point, didn't he? Or is that
he did. Yeah, he was. I'm sure he did. Although there was
he
a
had
period
a spell where
games.
he was getting starts at the start of the season, and then he got injured, and he just at a stage where he looked like he'd be pushing and really asking those questions and being regular in the starting 11, because at that stage when he did get injured, Sandro Tonali the ban was coming. So instead it ended up being Lewis Miley, who's now out injured. So in a way, that injury has opened the door to Elliot Anderson to stake the claim to the place he probably feels he had the right to initially, had it not been for his initial injury. So yeah, big month or so for him coming up, or big final 6 games for him, and big final 6 games for Newcastle United with the battle for Europe.
Battle for Europe, yeah. It's
took another twist, hasn't it, since we last did a video?
Where coefficient goes over my head. You would start really well, but basically England can't get a 5th Champions League place now. I think it's pretty much impossible. All right.
Yeah.
Think
it's unlikely, yeah. But I'm reminding myself of what Liam Kennedy said. You can't count your chickens just yet. But yeah, I guess the FA Cup twists and turns over the weekend probably play a bigger part and are more pertinent to Newcastle's situation, because currently there'll be a Conference League spot. If Man City win the FA Cup, then 6th will be a Europa League spot, 7th will be a Conference League spot. If Man U win the FA Cup, then it really just depends on where Man U finish. If they finish top 6, then obviously 6th Europa League, 7th Conference League. They finish outside the top 6, then it's wherever Man U finish, and then 6th place will be the Conference League. So yeah, got that out of the way. It wasn't worth the full video. I was trying to push it at one stage, but yeah, got that out of the way. And then where do you want to go next, Jordan? We've got Crystal Palace trip there next. Good team. Good form as well, in both teams looking for the 3rd straight Premier League win. And Palace have done it in style by beating Liverpool away, something pretty much no team does these days, and thrashing West Ham over the weekend.
Yeah, well, they've done Newcastle a favour, because it feels like West Ham's hopes of getting into that top 7 are dwindling by the week. I don't know the fixtures off by heart, but I had a quick glance yesterday, and I know there's some big teams left to play in there for West Ham, so it feels like in many ways they've sort of been ruled out, and I think Chelsea are probably one to watch, possibly even. I mean, there's a couple of teams in around the table that can't catch Newcastle, but it feels like Chelsea are probably the biggest threat, if you like, albeit they remain very inconsistent. But I watched them against Man City the weekend, and I actually thought they were all right. Obviously, the thrashed Everton on Monday as well. So for all the inconsistency Chelsea have got, they've shown that they got that bit of quality. Obviously, Cole Palmer mainly, But for me, that feels like the main threat to Newcastle's top 7 hopes. Manchester United, of course, are a big threat as well. We don't want, as you mentioned there, we don't want them to win the FA Cup, because if Newcastle go and finish in the top 6, 7, then it almost just rules out a Europa League place. Can Newcastle go and get top 5? Me and Liam done a video on this. You've all seen that. Me and Liam have convinced ourselves that we can go and get top 5, but highly
it's not
unlikely. It's not impossible.
But yeah, the beauty of these final 6 games is it is all in Newcastle's hands, which a few weeks ago, or even a couple of months ago, you wouldn't have expected. You would have really taken your hand off to be offered this situation. 6th in the table, very favourable goal difference when you look at the teams. Significant goal difference advantages over the likes of Manchester United and West Ham, who, if we're talking goal difference, at least probably almost certainly won't catch Newcastle. Chelsea, I think there's maybe a 9 goal difference swing, which could happen. So yeah, hopefully it doesn't come down to anything like that. Or well, if it does, Newcastle would be in the driver's seat anyway. But yeah, and then you look at favourable fixtures, but when have favourable fixtures been a guarantee, particularly as far as Newcastle United are concerned? But yeah, I think Palace will be a tough test. If Newcastle can win that, you're looking ahead to, say, Sheffield United next at home.
Well, could be relegated by then, by the looks of it, because that was a big loss for them against Burnley at the weekend.
Yeah, it was.
Newcastle in the next 2 after Crystal Palace have got 2 of the relegation threatened teams, so they could actually have a major shoe in in Europe by the time they next play at home against, is it Brighton, I think it is?
Yeah.
Which would be an incredible achievement, because as you mentioned, they never ever felt sort of likely the way they were performing from December onwards. But I think one thing that could get them over the line, I think, is the newly formed front three, which I think is a
question, Sean.
It was I mean, it's Isak, Barnes, Gordon. It was the first time they started together.
You said that in our previous video, but
I didn't.
You were I think it is.
I was second guessing myself, but I mean, 4 goals. Newcastle wiping the floor with Spurs. Them as the front three. It looks like a dangerous front three, in my opinion. I wrote a piece on Newcastle World about this, where Isak and Gordon, of course, have been the standout players in Newcastle this season. But add Barnes into the mix, and I think it's a very, very, as I say there, deadly trio. All bring something different. Isak, he's Thierry Henry-esque, skilled. Just everything about Gordon at the minute, everything he touches turns to gold, and of course Barnes is an excellent finisher who picks out really good position. I think he's quite an intelligent footballer, so that front three for me could actually drag Newcastle to Europe. I don't think there's potentially many at this moment in the Premier League currently that could form a better front three. I think I asked Eddie Howe about it, and I think the thing he sort of alluded to was you'd take an Anthony Gordon who's performed so well on the left hand side, and you have to play him over the right to then facilitate for Harvey Barnes. But for me, Anthony Gordon is brilliant wherever he plays in that front line, so I think we're seeing in that Spurs game he's just as effective on the right hand side as he's
best performances, if
absolutely.
Not his best.
So for me, that's the front three Newcastle have got to go with, and touch wood that front three remains fit, because that's been the biggest problem this season. Harvey Barnes' injury hasn't allowed Eddie Howe to do that, but we've seen it for the final half an hour against Fulham, that front three, and then we're seeing it against Tottenham Hotspur. It's a very exciting prospect, and as I say, I think if they can stay fit, I think it could drag Newcastle to Europe.
Yeah, and an incredible stat with that front three.
Yes, I was waiting for you to come in with that.
They've barely played together this season, but because they have barely played together, when those front three on the pitch for Newcastle United average a goal every 17 minutes,
incredible.
Which is just like incredible.
I didn't put that in my opinion piece, I should have.
No, yeah, that's incredible, but obviously a very small sample size in terms of the actual minutes they have played together. They obviously played the Spurs game, the first start of the season, and then there's been occasions dripped throughout the season where they've all been on the pitch, and it's been prolific for Newcastle, clearly. But yeah, moving on.
Another right forward that could come in.
Well, yes, that was my question. Yeah, that's a good segue.
Let's try.
Obviously, Yanuba M had a eventful weekend. scored. I was going to say scored. He didn't. He got sent off.
Yeah.
He got 2 yellow cards in the Dutch Cup final win for Feyenoord. Picked up the Dutch Cup, his first silverware of his career. He's actually the first Newcastle signing since the takeover to pick up any silverware.
Oh, right, yeah.
Well, stating obvious that, but yeah. So yeah, I asked Eddie Howe about obviously that and what his plans are for the summer for Yanuba M, because obviously 10 goals for Feyenoord this season. He scored in the Champions League. He's helped a very good Dutch side compete at the top end of the table, win a cup. What are the plans for him in the summer? Because Newcastle got him last season, but we haven't seen him. Fans haven't seen him. There's plenty of excitement surrounding him. But yeah, Feyenoord want to keep hold of him as well. Obviously keen to do that. And Newcastle are probably presented with a slightly awkward situation where they've paid not a massive amount of money for a 19-year-old, £6-7 million, and they could potentially double or treble that after the season he's had. Is it just an easy, quick PSR fix for them? That's something that they'll have to consider. And I asked Eddie Howe, is he part of your pre-season plans? Eddie Howe said, I don't know, we have a decision to make on Yanuba M, which is probably not the news we wanted to hear. That there's still some uncertainty surrounding him, because I was excited. I was looking forward to seeing him in action in pre-season at least.
No, absolutely. I mean, we don't know. Eddie Howe's sort of created some uncertainty there, but I think the right thing for Newcastle to do would have a look at him in pre-season,
give him a chance,
and then just make a decision. So you mentioned there about, could you make a quick win on him and double his price like what you paid for him? If you don't think he's good enough, then that's probably the right thing to do. But if you look at him in pre-season and go, well, actually keep him for another 3 or 4 years, he could become a regular starter, yeah, or you could actually treble his price tag. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
exactly, yeah.
I think it makes sense for him to come back here in pre-season. Newcastle have a proper look at him. I think a loan next year probably would make sense, depending on what Newcastle see in training and pre-season.
Yeah. Where does he go, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, where do you pitch him? I think Feyenoord's been a really good loan for him. Dutch league isn't the greatest to stand, let's be honest, but the opportunity to play Champions League football, win a trophy, been a very productive loan spell. Where do you go after that? Do you pitch him in another European league? Do you bring him into England and play in the Championship? But going from Champions League to Championship, I don't know.
Sounds like a backwards step.
It does,
really,
it does, yeah. But I suppose it gets you used to the, without saying a total British, it gets you used to the British game playing in the Championship. So as Eddie Howe says there, they've got a decision to make. But I think there'll be absolutely no harm in them bringing him back here in pre-season, have a proper look at them, and then make a decision, which I think will do. But obviously Eddie Howe didn't confirm that.
Yeah, he obviously wouldn't take up a place in the 25-man squad either if
No.
you wanted to think further forward and into the Premier League. So there's that to consider. But obviously 19, you want to be playing as much as possible, and that's something Newcastle simply, as you touched on with that front three, Newcastle can't really guarantee at the moment.
Yeah.
Another player whose future is uncertain, who we've touched on, it's Callum Wilson. Obviously has a year left on his contract. Eddie Howe spoke about, going on a slight tangent here, spoke about Joe Linton having a year left on his contract and how it was so important to tie him down to a new deal. Yet Callum Wilson, even Kieran Trippier, Sean Longstaff, that's sort of gone under the radar slightly. And now Callum Wilson, who's been Newcastle's top scorer every season he's been at the club, bar this season, which Alexander Isak will probably get, but being such an important player for Newcastle United and for Eddie Howe. And Eddie Howe's at a difficult situation because Callum Wilson is probably your last chance to make any significant money on him this summer.
1 year left on his contract, I think.
He's still a valuable player in terms of when he's fit, what he offers.
Well, that's exactly what you've got to weigh up, and we've done that many times here on this channel, where Callum Wilson is a Premier League goal scorer. There aren't many better, but unfortunately for Callum Wilson, he isn't fit for enough games in the season. You mentioned there that Isak, sort of Wilson cursed this season. Wilson just hasn't been there, and it's had an impact on the team. So again, do you sell Callum Wilson and then try and bring in a replacement who, okay, you've got to concede that whoever you sign is not going to score as many Premier League goals but plays more games? Or do you keep Callum Wilson, who will score Premier League goals but doesn't play enough games? It's a real dilemma for me, but I think Eddie Howe, with the relationship he has with Callum Wilson, I'm pretty sure will probably be pushing to to keep him. But again, as we've just sort of weighed up there, that dilemma, what do you do? It's a difficult situation. I wouldn't be telling anyone what to do here, but it's a real difficult one, I think.
Yeah, if you decide to keep him, then do you have to offer him a new contract? Because then you're like, or risk losing him for free in the summer, or does a 33, 34-year-old Callum Wilson in a year or two's time, does he have much value at all? I think the time to sell Callum Wilson was probably last summer, if we're being honest.
Yeah,
if you could get in terms of how high his stock was, he obviously part of the England set up on the back of 18 Premier League goals. He was fully fit. You could probably get a decent fee for him, but I think it made sense for Newcastle to keep hold of him. He is, as we say, a proven goal scorer and supplemented Alexander Isak so well, and they complemented each other really, really well towards the back end of last season. So the thought of doing that with the added pressures of European football as well just made sense. So I completely see where Newcastle were coming from, keeping hold of him and actually offering him a new contract. But now it's a difficult situation. I think Callum Wilson is possibly playing for his future these final 6 games, see what impact he can make, because let's be honest, he's probably not a million miles away from the England squad either, if there's a couple of injuries as well, and if he ends the season well, there's a chance.
Yeah, I think that's all he's got to do. I mean, I agree with you. I think Callum Wilson will hit the ground running. I think, as the player said himself, he's at his best when people are doubting him, so the best thing he can do now is come back for these final 6 games, score a couple of goals, and we're all having different conversations, because it changes the perception, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Football's very fickle, we're very fickle. But yeah, Callum Wilson stays fit, scores goals between now and the end of the season. You probably think, you know what, probably will keep him. His goal record is incredible. Yeah. I think is it 7 or 8 goals this season, and only
scored eight goals, I think.
8
I
goals.
think he's only made about 7 or 8 starts.
You can't argue with those stats, but as I said there, that's the dilemma. Do you keep that, but you almost, as I say, concede that he doesn't play as many games, or do you flip around and go, well, actually, we'll not the goals, we'll lose the goals, but we'll take more appearances, and it almost frees Alexander Isak up to have a rest every now and again. As I say, it's a difficult dilemma. I was always sort of the mindset that they should sell Wilson because of that. If his age, like 1 year left on his contract, but see, if he starts scoring goals again, then there's probably different conversations to be had between us two and Liam as well.
Yeah, it's funny the fickle nature of you mentioned. Callum Wilson gets an injury, it's sell him. Callum Wilson's fit and scoring, he's the best player in the world. So yeah, it's an interesting one. There's a debate surrounding like how much is Callum Wilson actually worth to Eddie Howe and to Newcastle, and is finding a replacement of his calibre possible for the type of money Newcastle would have to spend, and it's probably not, but like Jordan says, it's a sort of heart over head
it is, it's a
dilemma where do you get I always go to this example, do you get like a Chris Wood who's a sort of experienced head, stays fit relatively, he's had a couple of injury problems, but in Newcastle he stayed fit, just as that other body, or do you get a less reliable player but a higher quality player in the mould of Callum Wilson? And I don't know. I think, like I say, I think I'll use the final 6 games to sort of make my mind up on Callum Wilson and throw the gauntlet down to him. Callum, go on, do it for Newcastle, do it for the Geordie Journey, do it for England, St George's Day.
It is St George's Day. Yeah, well, both of us will sit on the fence in terms of Callum Wilson's future until the final, until the end of the season. Any other talking points, Tom, or shall we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think we can wrap it up there. Yeah.
I don't think there was much more else, to be honest, as a train flies past there.
We'll be at Palace tomorrow. We'll be getting the train to Palace tomorrow. Myself, Jordan, joined by Liam as well, at Selhurst Park, Wednesday night.
Bad press box, Selhurst Park. So yeah, I'd say you guys are a better view on the telly, but it's not on telly.
Can't really see what's going on at the back of the stand at Selhurst Park. But yeah, we'll be there either way, and looking forward to that. Hopefully Newcastle can pick up a 3rd straight Premier League win for the first time since September. And yeah, we're talking positively about Newcastle's European prospects. So yeah, we'll see you there. If you like this video, if you like what we do in general, we try our best. Please remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, ring the bell for all of your latest Geordie Journals content. Cheers.